The Xeno Empire, a ruthless race of alien conquerors, had long terrorized the known galaxy. Their campaigns of subjugation were swift and merciless, crushing any resistance with overwhelming force. But their greatest triumph came when they set their sights on the small backwater planet called Earth, a world they deemed insignificant and ripe for the taking. For centuries, the people of Earth had lived in relative peace, divided into competing nations and vying for limited resources. Their technologies, while impressive for their level of advancement, were no match for the Xenos' hyper-advanced weaponry and spacecraft. The Xenos saw the humans as primitives, barely worthy of their attention. When the first Xeno scouting vessels arrived in Earth's orbit, the global response was a mix of panic and disbelief. The human militaries scrambled to mobilize, but their aging fighter jets and outdated missile systems were no match for the sleek, powerful Xeno warships that descended upon the planet. Within days, major cities across the globe were reduced to rubble, their populations either killed or taken captive. The United Nations, humanity's closest approximation to a unified global government, pleaded for mercy and offered complete surrender. The Xeno overlords, sensing an easy victory, accepted the terms without hesitation. They had crushed countless civilizations before, and saw no reason why this backwater world would be any different. As Xeno troop transports landed in the ravaged capital cities, the human resistance began to crumble. Overwhelmed by the alien invaders' technological superiority, national armies were quickly routed and forced into retreat. Leaders of the world's most powerful nations were dragged from their hiding places and summarily executed, their deaths broadcast as a warning to any who dared defy the Xeno Empire. In the aftermath of the invasion, the Xenos wasted no time in asserting their dominance. They established expansive military bases, stripping the planet of its natural resources to fuel their interstellar war machine. Human civilians were forced into labor camps, compelled to toil endlessly to meet the Xenos' insatiable demands. Any signs of unrest were brutally crushed, the Xeno governors showing no mercy to those who dared to resist. Yet even as the human population was brought to its knees, a glimmer of hope remained. In the shadows, pockets of resistance fighters began to organize, drawing strength from the indomitable spirit that had defined humanity for millennia. They knew that their chances of victory were slim, but the alternative, living forever under the cruel yoke of Xeno oppression, was unacceptable. As the Xeno Empire tightened its grip on the conquered world, a single question echoed through the minds of the human survivors. How long could they hold out before their captors realized the true strength of the species they had so carelessly underestimated? The Xeno invasion of Earth was a blitzkrieg of advanced technology and sheer military might. Their sleek, powerful warships bombarded the planet's meager defenses, while legions of Xeno shock troops overwhelmed the disorganized human armies. Within weeks, the major governments of Earth capitulated, and the Xeno overlords moved in to begin stripping the planet of its resources. The Xeno leadership celebrated, certain that this backward, primitive world would pose no further threat. As the Xeno forces established their occupation, they quickly set about implementing a ruthless regime of control and exploitation. Vast swaths of land were seized, their natural resources, from precious metals to fossil fuels, stripped and loaded onto massive cargo vessels bound for the Xeno homeworld. Human populations were herded into sprawling labor camps, where they were forced to toil endlessly to meet the insatiable demands of their alien overlords. The Xeno governors, secure in their victory, cared little for the welfare of their human subjects. They viewed the conquered populace as little more than a ready source of slave labor, to be worked to the bone without regard for their health or well-being. Those who dared to protest or resist were swiftly crushed, their bodies left as grim reminders of the consequences of defiance. Yet, despite the oppressive conditions, the human spirit refused to be broken. In the darkest corners of the labor camps, whispers of rebellion began to spread. Rumors of a growing resistance movement, small but determined, reached the ears of the Xeno authorities, who responded with ever harsher measures to stifle the nascent unrest. As the months passed, The Xeno occupation tightened its grip, and the human population grew increasingly desperate. Families were torn apart, with children taken from their parents to be indoctrinated into the Xeno way of life. Precious resources that had once sustained entire communities were siphoned away, leaving the people on the verge of starvation. Still, the resistance persisted, its members driven by a burning desire for freedom and a deep-seated belief in the indomitable nature of the human spirit. In hidden safe houses and abandoned industrial complexes, they plotted and planned, gathering what meager resources they could to prepare for the day when they would strike back against their oppressors. The Xeno overseers, blinded by their own arrogance, failed to see the growing storm on the horizon. They had come to this world with the expectation of an easy victory, and now they reveled in their perceived triumph, secure in the knowledge that their conquest was complete. But unbeknownst to them, the people of Earth were quietly, steadfastly, preparing to shatter that illusion, and to show the Xeno Empire the true power of humanity. As the Xeno occupation continued to tighten its grip, the resistance fighters knew that their window of opportunity was narrowing. They would have to move quickly before the last vestiges of human freedom were extinguished. The time for action was fast approaching, and they were determined to seize it, no matter the cost. Yet the Xenos failed to understand the unbreakable spirit of the human race. As the alien oppressors tightened their grip, pockets of resistance began to form across the globe. Guerrilla fighters, lacking in numbers and equipment, launched daring raids on Xeno outposts and supply convoys. The Xeno governors grew increasingly frustrated, unable to quell the growing uprisings that plagued their occupation. In the darkest corners of the labor camps, whispers of rebellion slowly coalesced into action. Inmates, driven by desperation and a thirst for freedom, began to organize. They pooled their meager resources, crafting crude but effective weapons from salvaged materials. When the Xeno guards least expected it, the prisoners would rise up, overpowering their captors and seizing control of the camps. These initial victories, though small, sent shockwaves through the Xeno command structure. The governors, accustomed to unquestioning obedience, were bewildered by the stubborn resistance of their human subjects. They responded with ever harsher crackdowns, deploying heavily armed shock troops to brutally suppress the uprisings. But the human resistance was not to be deterred. Taking inspiration from their comrades in the labor camps, pockets of guerrilla fighters began to emerge in the ruined cities and remote wilderness areas. Using hit-and-run tactics, they struck at Xeno supply lines and communications hubs, sowing chaos and disrupting the efficiency of the occupation. The Xeno governors, increasingly alarmed by the growing unrest, poured more resources into maintaining control. They established a network of surveillance outposts and checkpoints, hoping to root out the resistance fighters before they could gain any real momentum. Yet, time and again, the guerrillas managed to slip through the Xeno defenses, disappearing into the shadows before the alien forces could respond. As the human resistance movement gained strength, its members began to dream of a bolder plan, one that would strike at the heart of the Xeno occupation and perhaps even turn the tide of the war. In hidden command centers, the resistance leaders plotted and strategized, drawing up plans for a series of coordinated attacks that would cripple the Xeno's hold on the planet. The key, they knew, would be to target the Xeno's most vital assets, their advanced technology. If they could find a way to disrupt or even destroy the alien invaders' sophisticated weaponry and communication systems, it might create an opening for a larger-scale uprising. But such an ambitious plan would require immense coordination, as well as access to resources that seemed frustratingly out of reach. Still, the resistance fighters were undaunted. They had tasted the first fruits of victory, and they were hungry for more. The Xenos had made a grave mistake in underestimating the resilience and determination of the human spirit. Now, as the resistance movement gathered strength and momentum, the stage was set for a decisive confrontation that would shake the foundations of the Xeno Empire. Unbeknownst to the arrogant Xenos, the humans had been hard at work in secret reverse engineering captured alien technology. In hidden laboratories and makeshift workshops, the brightest scientific minds pooled their knowledge and resources, driven by a singular goal: to develop weapons and vehicles that could match, or even surpass, the Xenos' technological advantage. It was a race against time, as the human resistance prepared to strike back with a vengeance. At the forefront of this clandestine effort was a team of young, brilliant engineers and technicians, led by a former university professor named Dr. Amelia Sinclair. Having narrowly escaped the Xeno occupation, Sinclair and her colleagues had dedicated themselves to uncovering the secrets of the alien invaders' advanced systems. Working tirelessly, often at great personal risk, the team scavenged for parts and materials, piecing together a network of hidden facilities where they could conduct their research in relative safety. They knew that the success of the resistance movement hinged on their ability to level the technological playing field, and they were driven by a fierce determination to liberate their homeworld from the Xenos' oppressive grip. As the months passed, their efforts began to bear fruit. Using a combination of reverse engineering, innovative thinking, and sheer ingenuity, the team developed a series of prototype weapons and vehicles that could rival the Xenos' advanced technology. Sleek, maneuverable fighter craft capable of matching the speed and firepower of the Xeno warships. Powerful energy weapons that could punch through even the toughest Xeno armor. And perhaps most importantly, a sophisticated communications network that could coordinate the Resistance's attacks and evade the Xenos' surveillance systems. The Resistance leaders, upon seeing the capabilities of these new human-made tools of war, were both amazed and emboldened. They knew that the time had come to put their plans into action, to strike a decisive blow against the Xeno occupation and reclaim their freedom. But even as the Resistance fighters prepared for their first major offensive, they remained wary of the Xenos' overwhelming might. The alien invaders had crushed countless civilizations before, and they would not go down without a fight. The humans knew that they were facing an uphill battle, but the stakes were too high to back down now. In the hidden command centers of the Resistance movement, strategies were refined, logistics were coordinated, and the final preparations were made. The time for action had arrived, and the human fighters were ready to show the Xeno Empire the true strength of their indomitable spirit. As the first strikes were launched, the Xeno governors were caught off guard, their confidence shaken by the unexpected resilience and technological prowess of their human adversaries. The tide of the occupation began to turn, and the Xenos found themselves facing a determined and resourceful foe that refused to be broken. The humans, emboldened by their initial victories, pressed their advantage, launching a series of daring raids and coordinated attacks that disrupted the Xenos' control of the planet. The alien invaders, once so certain of their supremacy, now found themselves on the defensive, struggling to maintain their grip on the increasingly volatile human population. It was a pivotal moment in the struggle for Earth's freedom, a turning point that would echo through the stars and challenge the very foundations of the Xeno Empire. The humans had taken their first steps towards reclaiming their world, and they were just getting started. The turning point came when the first prototypes of these new human-made weapons were field-tested. The Xenos, confident in their superiority, dismissed the initial skirmishes as mere nuisances. But as the human resistance grew bolder and their technology more advanced, the tide began to turn. Xeno strongholds and outposts were overrun, their advanced war machines rendered obsolete by the ingenuity of their human foes. The invaders found themselves facing a determined and resourceful enemy that refused to be broken. The first major engagement took place in the outskirts of a once bustling city, now reduced to rubble by the Xeno bombardment. A convoy of Xeno supply trucks, escorted by a formidable hover tank, was making its way through the ravaged streets when it was ambushed by the Resistance fighters. The human strike team, piloting sleek, agile fighter craft equipped with the latest energy weapons, swooped down from the surrounding buildings, catching the Xeno forces by surprise. In a matter of minutes, the hover tank was disabled, its sophisticated systems overloaded by the intense firepower. The supply trucks, unable to outrun the human pursuit, were quickly captured, their precious cargo of fuel and munitions seized by the resistance. The Xeno guards, outmatched and outmaneuvered, were swiftly neutralized. As the human pilots touched down, the resistance fighters on the ground emerged from their hiding places, cheering and embracing their comrades in arms. It was a profound moment, a testament to the resilience and ingenuity of the human spirit. News of the victory spread rapidly, fueling the flames of hope among the oppressed population. Across the planet, other resistance cells began to mobilize, emboldened by the demonstration of the humans' newfound technological prowess. They knew that the tide was turning, that the Xeno's once unassailable grip on the planet was beginning to slip. The Xeno governors, stunned by the unexpected defeat, scrambled to mount a response. They dispatched their most elite combat units, heavily armed and equipped with the latest in alien military technology. But the human resistance, now bolstered by a growing arsenal of captured Xeno weapons and vehicles, met the onslaught with determined defiance. In a series of bloody engagements, the resistance fighters proved themselves to be formidable opponents, their superior maneuverability and coordinated tactics offsetting the Xeno's raw firepower. Time and again, the alien invaders found their vaunted war machines outmaneuvered and outmatched by the humans' innovative approach to combat. As the losses mounted, the Xeno governors began to realize the gravity of their miscalculation. They had underestimated the resilience and ingenuity of the human race, dismissing them as little more than primitive savages. But now, confronted with the reality of a technologically empowered resistance movement, they found themselves on the brink of a devastating defeat. The Xenos, once so confident in their superiority, now faced a stark choice: double down on their efforts to crush the human spirit, or risk losing their stranglehold on the conquered world. The future of their occupation hung in the balance, and the Xeno leadership knew that they could no longer afford to take the humans for granted. The stage was set for a titanic struggle, a war for the very soul of the planet. The humans, fueled by a burning desire for freedom, had proven that they were a force to be reckoned with. And the Xenos, their arrogance shaken, were about to learn a hard lesson: that the true strength of humanity could not be so easily broken. Panic began to set in among the Xeno leadership. They had underestimated the resilience and ingenuity of the human race, and now they watched helplessly as their once certain victory slipped away. Desperate to regain control, they poured more resources into the occupation, but the humans only grew stronger and more organized in their resistance. The Xenos realized that their hold on Earth was tenuous at best, and that their dreams of total domination were in jeopardy. In the halls of the Xeno Imperial Command, the governors convened an emergency council, their faces twisted with a mixture of alarm and disbelief. For centuries, the Xeno Empire had crushed any civilization that dared to defy their might, subjugating world after world with ruthless efficiency. But now, confronted with this stubborn, resourceful species from a backwater planet, they found themselves facing an unprecedented challenge. How could this have happened? One of the governors growled, slamming his fist on the table. Our forces were overwhelming. Our technology was superior. We should have crushed these humans into submission. Another governor, his eyes narrowed in contemplation, spoke up. It seems we have underestimated the strength of the human spirit. They have shown a remarkable ability to adapt and innovate in the face of adversity. We must reconsider our strategies if we hope to regain control of this world. The debate raged on, with the Xeno leadership torn between doubling down on their brutal tactics or seeking a more measured approach. Some argued for the complete annihilation of the human resistance, even if it meant razing entire cities to the ground. Others advocated for a more calculated campaign of subjugation, using a combination of military force and political manipulation to quell the unrest. As the arguments grew more heated, the lead governor, a seasoned veteran of countless conquests, raised a hand to silence the room. "Enough," he said, his voice low and grave. "It is clear that our usual methods will not suffice in this case. We must adapt, or risk losing everything we have worked to build." Turning to his subordinates, The governor laid out a new strategy, one that would require a significant shift in their approach. Rather than relying solely on overwhelming military might, they would need to employ a more nuanced, multifaceted plan, one that combined targeted military strikes with sophisticated psychological operations and political maneuvering. The key, he argued, was to sow division and discord within the human population, exploiting any fault lines or ideological differences that might exist. By pitting one faction against another, they could weaken the resistance movement from within, making it more difficult for the humans to mount a united front against the Xeno occupation. At the same time, the Xeno forces would need to conduct a series of high-profile, devastating attacks to demoralize the human fighters and demonstrate the futility of their resistance. The goal was to shatter the morale of the resistance, to convince the people of Earth that their cause was hopeless, and that submission was the only path to survival. It was a risky gambit, the governor acknowledged, but one that he believed could turn the tide of the conflict. If the Xenos could successfully implement this new strategy, they might just be able to regain control of the planet and crush the human resistance once and for all. As the council adjourned, a sense of grim determination settled over the Xeno leadership. They had underestimated the human strength and resolve, but they were not about to let this small, insignificant world slip from their grasp. The stakes were too high, and the Xeno Empire could not afford to lose. The stage was set for a brutal, multifaceted campaign that would test the limits of both the human resistance and Xeno's own adaptability. The outcome would determine the fate of Earth, and perhaps the future of the entire galaxy. In a last-ditch effort, the Xeno commanders ordered a full-scale withdrawal from Earth. The human forces, now wielding advanced weaponry and coordinated tactics, pursued the retreating alien invaders relentlessly. The Xenos, once so confident in their superiority, were forced to flee in disarray, leaving behind a trail of devastated outposts and abandoned equipment. It was a humiliating defeat, one that would echo through the Xeno Empire for generations to come. As the order for retreat was issued, a wave of panic swept through the Xeno occupation forces. They had grown accustomed to the certainty of victory, the unquestioned belief that their technological and military might would crush any resistance. But now, faced with the determined, resourceful onslaught of the human fighters, that confidence had been shattered. The Xeno governors barked frantic commands, desperately trying to organize a coordinated withdrawal. But the human resistance, bolstered by their recent victories, moved with a swiftness and coordination that the Xenos had never anticipated. Strikes on key supply lines and communication hubs sowed chaos, disrupting the Xenos' ability to mount an effective retreat. In the skies above the ravaged cities, fierce aerial battles erupted as the human fighter pilots engaged the Xeno warships. Using their agile, energy-based craft, the resistance fighters outmaneuvered and outgunned their larger, more cumbersome adversaries. One by one, the Xeno ships were brought down, their hulking forms crashing to the ground in towering plumes of smoke and fire. On the ground, the human resistance forces pressed their advantage, closing in on the retreating Xeno troops with ruthless determination. Squads of heavily armed Xeno shock troopers made desperate last stands, but they were no match for the coordinated, tech-savvy guerrilla fighters who had become masters of urban combat. As the Xeno forces began to crumble, a sense of triumph swept through the human resistance. Years of oppression, hardship, and sacrifice had forged an unbreakable spirit, and now they were witnessing the fruits of their labor. The alien invaders, once so confident in their ability to subjugate the human race, were being driven from their homeworld in disgrace. In the command centers of the resistance, the leaders watched the retreat unfold with a mixture of elation and trepidation. They knew that the Xenos would not give up easily, and that the fight for Earth's freedom was far from over. The Xeno Empire was a formidable foe, and their retreat was likely a strategic move, a regrouping before a renewed offensive. But for now, the humans were savoring their hard-won victory. As the last of the Xeno ships disappeared over the horizon, the resistance fighters let out a collective cheer, their fists raised in triumph. They had proven that the human spirit could not be broken, that even the mightiest of empires could be humbled by the determination and ingenuity of a people fighting for their way of life. The Xeno governors, their faces etched with humiliation and rage, knew that they had underestimated their foe. The defeat on Earth would reverberate through the Xeno Empire, a stain on their prized record of conquest that they would not soon forget. They had celebrated their victory too soon, and now they would have to answer for their hubris. As the dust settled and the human resistance began the long process of rebuilding, a new resolve took hold. They had tasted freedom, and they were hungry for more. The fight was far from over, but they were determined to take the battle to the Xeno homeworld, to show the interstellar conquerors that the people of Earth would never again bow to their oppression. As the Xeno ships disappeared into the void of space, the people of Earth emerged from the shadows, battered but unbowed. They had faced the might of an interstellar empire and prevailed, proving that the human spirit could never be broken. The victory was celebrated across the planet, a triumphant declaration that humanity would never again be subjugated, and that the Xenos would pay dearly for their hubris. In the aftermath of the Xeno retreat, the human resistance quickly mobilized to secure their hard-won gains. Teams of engineers and technicians swarmed the abandoned Xeno outposts, scavenging valuable technologies and equipment that could be repurposed for the rebuilding effort. Meanwhile, the resistance fighters maintained a vigilant watch, ready to respond to any signs of a Xeno counterattack. As the news of the Xenos' defeat spread across the globe, a wave of newfound unity and purpose swept through the human population. Borders and ideological divisions that had once divided the nations of Earth were cast aside, replaced by a shared determination to heal the wounds of the occupation and prepare for the battles to come. In the halls of power, hastily assembled governing bodies began to take shape, drawing upon the leadership and expertise of the resistance movement. These provisional authorities faced a daunting task. Not only did they have to oversee the reconstruction of cities and infrastructure, but they also had to lay the foundations for a new, united global order that could withstand the might of the Xeno Empire. The resistance leaders, now hailed as heroes, took on pivotal roles in this process, using their hard-won knowledge and connections to navigate the complexities of post-occupation politics. Dr. Amelia Sinclair, the brilliant engineer who had spearheaded the development of the human-made weapons and vehicles, was tapped to lead a task force charged with reverse engineering xenotechnology for the benefit of the global population. Under Sinclair's guidance, teams of scientists and technicians worked tirelessly to unravel the secrets of the Xenos' advanced systems. Their goal was not only to ensure that the human race would never again be caught off guard by the alien invaders, but also to leverage this knowledge to improve the lives of people across the planet. Breakthroughs in areas like renewable energy, medical technology, and interstellar travel began to emerge, fueling a new era of prosperity and innovation. As the reconstruction effort gained momentum, the human resistance turned its sights to a more ambitious goal: the liberation of the Xeno homeworld. Drawing upon the captured Xeno ships and technology, they began to assemble a formidable interstellar fleet, one that would carry the fight directly to the heart of the Xeno Empire. The prospect of such a bold, audacious campaign filled the people of Earth with a mix of excitement and trepidation. They knew that the Xenos would not take their defeat lightly, and that the road ahead would be fraught with danger and sacrifice. But the memory of the oppression they had endured and the hard-won freedom they now enjoyed fueled their determination to see this fight through to the end. In the darkness of space, the Xeno leadership watched the growing human armada with a sense of dread. They had vastly underestimated the resilience and ingenuity of their former subjects, and now they faced the prospect of a full-scale invasion of their homeworld. The Xeno Empire, once thought to be unassailable, now found itself on the brink of a reckoning, the consequences of their hubris and cruelty about to come crashing down upon them. As the human fleet prepared to depart, the people of Earth stood united, their eyes fixed on the stars. They had reclaimed their world, and now they would take the fight to the Xenos. determined to ensure that their tormentors would never again threaten the freedom and sovereignty of humanity.